Hi there, I'm Dr. Bill Wyatt again, and I'm going to be talking to you tonight about a neat little video that I'm going to show you. I have to tell you that I'm a general dentist. I'm in the American Orthodontic Society. I'm board certified in that organization, and this is an organization of general and pediatric dentists that's dedicated to teaching orthodontics to others and learning it ourselves. And if you're a general or pediatric dentist or any kind of dentist and you want to join the American Orthodontic Society, you're welcome to. We have some excellent uh, teachers in the American Orthodontic Society. They're just the best instructors you're going to run into, and they're going to be trying to teach you as much as they can. We have our steps where you go through several steps working up to pass the boards, and if you pass the boards of the American Orthodontic Society, you will know how to do orthodontics. I can tell you that. And we have some wonderful instructors that are dedicated to teaching you, and we try to do real good bang up orthodontics if possible. Anyway, I want to get on to this video. I think it's really a kind of a loaded little video and very interesting, and it's something that I think that pediatric dentists would really be interested in. And let's get going on it right quick here. And let me, I've got to get my little marking pen here, wherever it is. This is a nice little girl here with a minor problem. It looks like a minor problem, but could develop into a real problem. But we caught it when she was quite young. Now, we'll look at it here, and you see that this is her model. She's got some kind of a tongue thrust problem or a some functional habit that we know she's got. Right here, it doesn't, you need to know what it is and try to break it and get her corrected in as far as the function is concerned. But when we look at this model right now, you can see that the midline of the bottom is over here, the midline of the top on this side, and she has shifted her upper jaw over into a crossbite on the right side of the mouth. The left side looks good. Now, this is not a unilateral crossbite. It's really a bilateral crossbite, except that it got to where it was just hitting on the cusp over here, and she shifted her jaw in this direction over here to get it to where she could close down in here and over here and chew her food better. It's just natural that she would do that. But this will fool a lot of people. They won't think that she shifted her jaw. Now, if you are a young person like this and you shift your jaw to accommodate the teeth, and you keeping it that way for any length of time, then the condyles sitting over here in the fossa, they have to shift for you to shift your jaw, and so they will remodel to fit that shift that you made in the jaw. And this may lead to a temporomandibular joint problem as you get older. It's very likely, because we have a lot of people with their chins off to one side or the other caused by allergies and various functional problems as they were growing up that could have been preventive if somebody had just known what they were doing here and knew how to do it, and were interested interseptive and preventive orthodontics. Now I started in, I did my first case back in 1956, and I had grown up in an orthodontic office. My uncle was one in Atlanta, taught at Emory. My mother worked for one for 25 years out in San Angelo, Texas, and I went to school there in the fourth grade, and I went up and stayed at his office until rode home with her, and was there a lot of times while they were working and everything. So I kind of grew up in an orthodontic office. That both my uncle and the guy my mother worked for were labiolingual orthodontists. They didn't have any, didn't need any other assistance. My mother was the only assistant he had. She took care of the books, collected the money, made the appointments and everything, and was the only person that worked in his office. Sometimes they would see 150 people in a day. I don't know how they did it, but they did with the labiolingual. Well, that's enough in that area. Let's get back to what we're interested in right here. Now, when this young lady, before she shifted her jaw, this top arch was right over this lower arch, and both the teeth would be kind of cusp to cusp. And so she shifted to accommodate the teeth to make it where she could close better, and that's why she did it. Now, all I did on this case, if I remember correctly, and I'll go through, I did not do anything except put a little expander in the upper arch, kind of a deal that fit up in the top of the arch and had a couple of legs on it, and we expanded that thing. I'll show it to you in just a minute. Now, this is the way she shifted her jaw, and this is brought about because she had this allergy, and she was breathing through the mouth, and having the tongue had to be in the bottom part of the arch for her to breathe through the mouth. You breathe over the tongue, and that widened the lower arch wider, and it grew faster, spread out faster than the upper arch. And she didn't swallow correctly, so the palate wouldn't develop quite as good and everything, and the airway didn't develop as good. And so she shifts her jaw to satisfy something that was missing to start with. Now, I've told you I've worked in Africa for about 3 years once, and I went to schools, and I went in this school and treated all the kids. I did all their orthodontics in this school, and this was in a town. It was a pretty good sized school, and they had not ever seen a dentist, and there was not a single malocclusion in that school except one that had a supernumerary tooth growing somewhere, and I took that out. And to the best of my knowledge, I wish to God I had documented that whole thing, but none of the kids needed anything. I just thought, well, this is marvelous. Maybe over in Africa they don't have any orthodontic problem, but they do in places where they get mixed up and send them back to the UK and they have orthodontic problems. But in that school, there was no orthodontic problems. And the only thing that I can come up with that brought this about was that, and also these people have a child and they have to nurse that child for 3 years, and normally they'll get pregnant about the second year, and they'll have another child about time the child here has nursed for 3 years. But if he nurses for 3 years, he cannot breathe through his mouth and nurse. And they nurse for a long time. They ride with their mother and stay with her. And they nurse for a long time. And these kids just didn't have malocclusion at that point. Now realize that over here we're mixed up, so we have two big reasons for having orthodontic problems. We get a small skeletal structure from one side of the family and a broad one from the other side, and they have a big tooth over here and a small bone over there, and they don't mix, and you have to have some extractions every once in a while, not as many as we used to do, but some extractions are necessary here. So we've got the crowded situation and the lack of the children nursing. In other words, we give them a bottle, and the faster they drink it, the better, and they don't nurse near as much, and so they don't breathe through their nasal airway like children over in Africa did. And so these kids had no malocclusion. That's the only thing that I bring about, and they were from the same family of people apparently, where they didn't have a big bone one and a small bone somewhere else, so they didn't have too much of this crowded problem either in there. So here we don't have that now. This young lady apparently did not do that. She was breathing through the mouth. She had allergies, and she may have put her thumb in her mouth or something. There was some functional problems going on. The palate was kind of narrowed down to some extent, and it caused her to shift her jaw so she could close better and get more teeth in this situation. And this has happened when if you look at this model and understand that, you can see what's going wrong here. Now I took this young lady, let's go ahead and look at her other views of her model here. You can see the crossbite on the right side, a total crossbite. On the left side is not. I mean, the left is pushed over on the side. We've got some crowding of the teeth up here, not a great deal, but the palate is not developed out like it should be. If you had been swallowing properly in here, you'd have this rounded out more like a tongue right there, and it's narrower than it should be. And you can pick this up from just looking at the model on this child. All right, the bottom arch is a little wider than the upper arch because the tongue stays down here and broadens this arch out. And we know that the tongue will broaden the arch. If it just stays down here and you breathe over the top of the tongue, this arch will get bigger than it's supposed to be, and you don't fit together good, so they shift to one side. Now sometimes they shift and it's still spread out so much you got a bilateral crossbite, but most of the time it's a unilateral crossbite that is shifted. It's really a bilateral that's shifted, and it gives you a unilateral appearance in there. Now this causes this arch to be wider, and that's why. Now I personally am a mouth breather, or not terrible bad, but my lower arch is spread out and I chew my cheeks all the time over here. I have to be very careful when I'm chewing not to chew my cheek because my lower arch is out too much, and we're kind of cusp to cusp out here, except they're worn down quite a bit over the years here. Anyway, this is what's happening in this child. So let's look at the rest of the models now, and then we'll look at her. Okay, here we are into the appliance that we built. Now I just talked to this young lady about breathing through the nose and not breathing through the mouth, and we put this little appliance in here. This is nothing but a little expanding device that's come in and soldered onto one tooth back here, and you spread this out. If you want to expand more up here, you spread this bar out, then you spread it up here, you spread the molar out, and you spread this out too, and you can control whether the spread is more here and more or less back here or more back here. You can spread this out. You make it, put it in, and you keep it in a little bit while you wait for it to get natural. Then you spread it. Now you put your cement in it and push it together and cement it in place. And this will be fitting tight against these teeth, and it may bring them out a little more than your molars do, or you can actually bring the molars out more than you do this. But anyway, it's an expanding device that we put in. That is the only thing that I ever used on this child, and I got her to be conscious about breathing through the nose and trying to keep her mouth shut and all this. I don't remember putting any tongue thrust appliance in or anything. Just put this in, and this spread this teeth out. Then she jumped out of the crossbite, came back in, and I'll show you how her teeth fit after we did that. Now this is just opened now to show you that. Now when we put this in and we spread this out, this jumped back over, and this side, which was inside here, it went back out. Now both sides are a little wider than they were to start with, you see, and the lower kind of catches up with it and spreads out a little bit more. But this spread this out, and this bite that was open like that came down this way. Now I don't think I put anything else in there at all. Now this was the early 70s, I believe, when we got into this. And there it is from several angles. Just that one band on a 6-year molar with that little kind of I call them a W appliance. It comes down and comes up, comes over and comes down. You can make this go out where you want it and have this go out down here, so you can spread the arch like you want to with that appliance. And just 2 bands on it, that's all it is. Alright, there it is again. We made our own devices in our own office, so they fit good, and we knew when we put them in, we spread them out, and then we squeezed them together and cemented them with the pressure on it to expand in both places wherever we wanted the expansion. Just squeezed it together and cemented it, and banded it like that. Now after just a short time, when she jumped out of the crossbite, then the opening in the upper closed together. In fact, it went to like this. She's functioning normal, didn't do a thing else to her, but it ended up like this, simply because we got the airway big enough where it could accommodate her, and she stopped her functional problem, and she started breathing through the nose, and this case just cleared up. Now, if we had not been there early on and understood what the problem was, this jaw would have been kicked over to this side. You see, it moved from, well, I'll take it back. The jaw went this way, and the upper jaw went this way in here, and because this met inside here, and so by doing that we got this spread out more and fit over, and so we didn't have the crossbite. Now the chin's straight on. I didn't straighten the midline at all. The midline was straight to start with, and it just popped up just like that. I didn't do one other thing to this case. And then it went ahead, and this young lady grew up, and I just happened to have pictures and everything of her, and her teeth came out like this with that simple appliance in there, simply because we caught it on time and did stuff to prevent this. Now it would have been okay to do whatever necessary to break the tongue thrust, the mouth breathing problem, and encourage her to breathe through her nose and everything. But anyway, she just fell right in line, and it turned out that way. And here she is after she got older, and I never did any orthodontics other than that for her. So this is interseptive preventive orthodontics. And when I started out in this back in 1956 and 7 and that era, I do not remember the orthodontists doing any preventive and interceptive orthodontics. I'm sure there was somebody doing it. There must have been. And I just started on my own learning how to prevent and keep this from doing. I came up with this slashing technique. You can look at that, and it works. And doing whatever required to prevent these things from taking place. And that's what the pediatric dentist ought to be doing. And I am sorry that there are people that in the pediatric area that do not think they ought to touch anything orthodontic. I just do not understand why they would say that. Now the orthodontists, there's all kinds of tough stuff out there to do, and I've done a lot of it, and I think this is what the orthodontists really need to be engaged in, and leave this early stuff to the pediatric dentist, or anybody that's working on kids ought to know this. I don't care who you are. You can be off in a little town, like I was off in a little town there was no pediatric dentist around there. I did all the pediatric dentistry, and I finally got to where I needed more orthodontics. I gave my adult orthodontics to a friend that came in with me, and I kept the kids and did them to supply my orthodontics. So the pediatric dentists need to be doing orthodontics. That's just my own opinion. I don't mean to get irritated with the orthodontists. The orthodontists are doing what they were taught to do, and but this ought to it ought to be some changes made, that the pediatric dentist would start doing this, like Lenny Carapese has really led out in this for a long time here. Ed Gonzalez, Roy Wolf up in St. Louis. I went up and spoke at he had a study club of about 150 people at one time, and I've been up there several times to speak at his group. And there's several other leading pediatric dentists around the country that are doing orthodontics and realize that they need to be doing it. So I am all for it, and appreciate being in the American Orthodontic Society, and we have it. In fact, I think the majority of our instructors are pediatric dentists. I taught for years with Dr. Jerry Laffer from Syracuse and his partner up there, some wonderful pedodontists and or pediatric dentists. And I want to encourage pediatric dentists to get with it and start. If you're not, start doing this orthodontics. So thank you for watching this little video. It's a simple little video, but if you hadn't got in there and done this to start with, then this little girl wouldn't be looking that good at this age right now. I can guarantee you that. So I'll hush up and we'll close this little video. And I don't mean to pick irritate the pediatric people that are running the show or the orthodontists that are on the other side. We ought to all work together. And I think general dentists, pedodontists, pediatric dentists, and orthodontists all ought to know a lot of orthodontics to do the things that are there that can be done on people. So I'll hush up and we'll sign off here. So thanks for watching it. See if I can get over here and stop it.